Well, it's good to be back together again, Chris and I, Jonathan, for the Ekklesiacast. And so we're going to be talking through Sunday's message this week, looking at 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 10 through 12, and examining, I think we called it what was the title of the message again? It was
Enduring Praise.
Enduring Praise, and looking at the connection between the ancient past and the contemporary present, right? That was
That's kind of the 30,000-foot view of this. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll be examining that today, and then just following up a little bit with the announcement on Sunday. If you weren't here, we kind of, as elders, we presented two men from our congregation that we see as potential new elders, and so we kind of outlined that process, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that at the end. So let's dive into that passage, and we can talk through that. Maybe you can give us a little recap of your message. And
Sure, yeah. It was just a wonderful section there to complete this opening praise that Peter had of the Lord and what he's doing through the new birth and their present reality of the trials that they were going through, and showing how what we're experiencing is not something new, but something that has been planned from that ancient past, as there were these statements that the Lord made regarding this coming of Messiah and what would unfold in that, and how we are the recipients of this now. We get a chance. I didn't really directly say it this way, but it really is such an amazing blessing that has been given to us to be able to look back at all of this and realize the reality of it. Like, we get to see the reality of so much of what they were anticipating. And so, and this section kind of is the capstone. It's the end of this opening praise that Peter had for these believers as he was wanting to encourage them in the midst of the challenges that they were facing, identifying with Christ, finding themselves in persecution in light of that, and the various exhortations he'll give them that we'll get into now, kind of the life part of this as it kind of works itself out. And this was this opening just burst of praise by Peter for what God has done. And so just a beautiful section that we were talking about it yesterday in our small group, that and I brought this up because as we were talking about it, a thought came to me, and I went, this is just so amazing. In one sense, it seems like this opening section was almost a microcosm of Peter's life. As you think about Peter and this man who walked with God, who then went through this very difficult trial because of this reconstructing that God had to do regarding his theological framework, and then the outflow of that, of his service to the Lord. And so it just seems like this little section, Peter, I don't believe this is, Peter wasn't using himself as an example, but I can't help but think that as Peter wrote this, he wasn't reflecting upon his life. Like, this was my life. And the Lord drew out some dross out of my faith, and then used me in such a remarkable way to do this, to announce this. And so it just was interesting last night as we were talking about it. I shared with our group, like, I never thought about it this way, but, that's what it looks like. Like, here's Peter reflecting back as he's looking at his own life and seeing that just magnificent work of God and how gracious he is in that work. From that new birth coming new life, and the way he develops that life. And this has all been planned. Like, this is what God has ordained, and how much comfort and joy that can bring us to know that, to be aware of that. And so this is just I think it's such a beautiful way in which Peter begins this letter. to encourage these believers. He just takes them and he lifts them up and causes them, wants them to look at God in the great work he's done for them through Christ. Before he gets into the specifics of, now here's what you're going to have to do in life, in light of this, here's life, and here's how you're going to engage with it. Yeah. Here's how now you're going to walk down this road and get into the specifics of what that is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things we talked about in our small group was, I think one of the questions was dealing with expectation and reality. And although that wasn't like the heart of your message, you talked about that in relationship to Peter with Matthew 16 and the expectation of, based on the Old Testament prophecy and what the Jews had interpreted that to mean, and then conclusions they reached. And then when the Messiah shows up, the conclusions Peter made in his own mind about who Jesus was, and then Jesus bringing, like you said, that pretty startling adjustment to Peter's expectations. And so we talked a little bit through that with our small group, just thinking through when God doesn't meet our expectations, when his reality is different, and some of the struggles that we have with that. And like we were just talking about the fact, like we really have to learn to just trust him, with the future, and to recognize the very thing that you said, and to find joy in that the Lord's in control, and that he's orchestrating events, and that it's okay that we're not holding on to the future that he is. So
yeah, it's interesting, when you said about Peter getting reconstructed there, that didn't, I don't believe that happened until his arrest, when Jesus was arrested. Like, Peter was still in the thinking, this isn't going to happen. And what that reminds me of is how similar we are in the selective way we hear sometimes or read. Like, the word can say certain things to us, but we just don't hear it, and we see something else. And then the Lord's got to bring that to bear. And I think, it was in that arrest that's when Peter's world, that's when it kind of collapsed. That's when it started this imploding that culminated in the fulfillment of what Jesus said to him, that you're going to deny me. And Peter did. And then Peter, it was like at that point, then he began to understand, and sometimes that's what it takes when there's that I like the way you said that, the expectation of reality. And, the Lord brings the circumstances into our life to bring harmony between those two. And it's usually going to require a collapse.
Yeah, one of my favorite, it's not really favorites, one of the things that always strikes me is, I think it's in the Gospel of John, where John, I think, I could be wrong, but the biblical author talks about that in that moment when Peter denied Jesus, that they actually made some kind of eye contact.
It's Luke. Luke brings that out. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really interesting because Luke brings out that human side of Jesus, right? He brings out this humanity. And I think it's one of those little indicators, like he's showing you the human interaction here, which would be palpable to us. Like here is this fulfillment, and then he looks right at Jesus, and it's like, man, I just think of my own life when I'm convicted that I'm wrong. Like, it's like, you do feel like you're looking at Jesus like, yep, you're right, I'm wrong. Like, I'm wrong. Like, there's no way, I can't hide this anymore. I'm wrong. It's how the Lord just works. It's how the Spirit works within us. And that's a good thing. I mean, that is good, although it's a hard place. And I just think, as Christians, we have a lot of things we've constructed that the Lord sometimes has to kind of change how we think about it. And I know it's a challenge in my own life. Like, I want to go with that, and I want to be good with that. And sometimes that's hard to be good with that and to go with that. But I think at the core of it, we have to let God be God, and we have to be able to adjust our lives to that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the parts of the journey that can become challenging, but ultimately will bring you great joy as you align yourself with that and kind of move down that path with it. But, it's so easy to become fixed in the sense of, I've got it all figured out. And that's why I know yesterday for me, the thing that spoke to me is, even as I was delivering the message, was that section in it where I was talking about, you don't have to take upon yourself the burden that you're carrying this, because you're not. That it's the Lord's, and His will shall be done. And we can be a child and enjoy life as a child, because we're not, like we were talking earlier, like we're not in control of that. Like, and that to me is just I think there are a lot of believers, and I don't exclude myself from that you take on that responsibility and you feel that burden, and in the midst of that, you forget, like, that's not mine to carry. I don't have to carry that. That is the Lord. He upholds the world by the authority of His word, not I. And there are a lot of believers that's the way they might live, that they have to bear up under the weight of that. And it's like, it's not your weight to carry. Never has been, never will be. And so I know that was the part of it that, like I said, even when you're teaching it, sometimes when you reflect back upon it, this was the part. I didn't use this illustration in the sermon, but I did think of it and identified with it as the prophets pondered what they wrote and thought about it. The analogy I had in my head was, man, I do that all the time with my messages. Like, there are sometimes I listen to my messages. You probably had this, where you listen to them to better your skill at communicating. So you're listening to them in a very technical way, and you're trying to better your ability to communicate. Pushing that aside, there are many other times I listen to the message going, man, let me think about that. Like, I know I said it, but I want to actually think about this. And I think about it. Like, like the Lord brings me back and I reflect upon something I said that maybe I didn't plan to say it that way, or maybe some insight that I didn't outline, but it certainly came out in the message, and it was like, it was there. And I ponder it, and then I think about it. Like, that's making me think about what is that? Which I identify with the prophets. Like, that makes sense. Like, they would give these prophecies, and I know Daniel has a bunch of examples of this. I didn't get into those. But they would say something, and then they're thinking about it. Like, when, how, who? Because this was such a large part of what they were looking for. And I didn't use this example as well, but Gamaliel, when he was talking about the disciples, and he said, hey, be careful what you do with these guys. Like, because if God is in this, we can't change it. And there have been others who have come and said the same thing, and nothing happened. So, if God isn't in it, it'll die off. So be careful. Like, be careful what you do here. And so, but I just identified with that. You get done preaching a message or teaching something, and then the Lord brings that back, and you start to ponder and think and reflect upon it from what you said and so forth. I think the prophets were probably no different in that regard.
Yeah, and one thing I'm just kind of thinking about right now is the way that the prophets, and the way that Peter outlines what the prophets were doing, is instructive for how we ought to think through, like, our role in terms of handing down the faith to the next generation. And just as I think about, like, Peter talks about how, the Lord gave them this word, which I can't imagine, like, the Lord using you to communicate something that you don't totally understand. There's a whole lot to explore there.
Right.
Like what was that for Isaiah, especially to write these two things that seem on one level, I'm sure to their minds, like some ways contradictory. Like, how is this going to play out? And as Peter says, they're inquiring. So they're thinking about it and probably really thinking about it. I imagine it's probably something Isaiah thought about the rest of his life. Right. What is this? Like, how is that going to work? And Peter says that it was revealed to them they were serving not themselves but you. And I just been thinking just in this moment, like the Lord's entrusted to us, for instance, right now, the ministry of Ecclesia for this moment in time. And kind of perhaps a good segue looking at Josh and Dan and their ministry amongst us, and God's passing it off to another generation. And there's the thing that I'm responsible for, or we're responsible for, but then we've been entrusted to just like hand that off. And you see that. I mean, I know it's not like Peter's exact intention here in this text, but
He's
just
not
thinking
handing
through
off
that.
prophecy, but it is something. Something that's happening to them that's going to benefit others, and I think that's where you're going with that. The idea that what's happening now is potentially going to be a benefit to somebody else, not to you. And and I think that was that point of acceptance. Like you have to accept that. Like, I don't get to see the fruit of that. And I have to be okay with that. And again, as a believer, I've got to be like, that's all right. Like that's okay. I can accept that. And, to your point about passing on the faith, like I may not see that passing on of that baton. I may not see the fruit that may come out of that. And that's again, in a world in which we're always looking for results and wanting to see the fruits of it, wanting that immediate gratification. That's a different approach to how we look at ministry. Like, I may not have that immediate gratification to see that.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the hard places to really trust the Lord is in those long-term areas where I think especially of parents with children that once they grow up, and I've been thinking about this a lot, once they grow up, like they have the opportunity to go the direction the Lord's calling them to go, or maybe to, God forbid that they would, walk away from the faith, but that happens. And it's like, I've got to trust God that, how I'm leading them is the way He desires. Hopefully I'm walking in the way that He wants me to lead them. But at the end of the day, like, I'm going to have to trust Him that He's got them. And it's something that I just regularly process is I've just got to trust that these boys are just, my stewardship. I'm just stewarding them for this. For 18 years, I've got to steward them. And then I'm going to have to just trust that God is... God's going to hold them and keep them.
Well, I think, to kind of run down that rabbit hole, I think the understanding in parenting that what you're attempting to do with your children is build a relationship with them so that they can have a relationship with the Lord and a relationship with other people is such a foundational element of your parenting. And there are a lot of parents that get off on that. They don't realize this is all about relationship and building relationship. And you have to build relationship with your kids. And it's interesting. One of the things that I see sometimes with parents who have older children, especially over the age of 18, and especially over the age of getting into their 20s, where they're really stepping into adulthood, that parents struggle with treating their children as adults. And parents, in that relationship, when you have adult children, it is the responsibility of the parent to open the door for your child to have an adult relationship with you, which means there's a different respect that goes on as you have adult children. because those dynamics of parent-child relationships just continue. And you're seeing it now with your boys as your boys get older. When your boys are young, you treat them one way, but as they get older, you have to begin to change how you're treating them because they are growing up. They're not a full adult yet, but they are growing up. So you're changing in how you do it. And eventually when they become adolescents, you're changing again. Like you have to respect that they have thoughts. And your task as a parent then is to engage with those thoughts and influence those thoughts and nurture those thoughts to understand the depth and the height and the breadth of what relationship is. And sometimes Christians don't get that. And it can create a lot of turbulence in children then when they don't understand that. Like I oftentimes say in parenting, your goal is not obedience. It's not to get your children to obey. Your goal is to build a relationship with them. And in that, obedience is a part of it. It's the initial part of it, but it's not the goal of it. And that's where I think many Christians think obedience is the goal. And if my children obey, that's going to be the end of it. And it's like, no, that's a means to an end. It's the beginning of the relationship. It's the recognition. Obedience, all obedience, in my estimation, all obedience does is show you, is just establish authority. That's all obedience does. Like it's established, whoever's in authority is the one who has the choice of what you're going to obey. And that just establishes authority. And with young children, that's all you're trying to do. You can understand, I'm the authority right now. I'm the parent. I'm the authority, and you're going to obey me.
And surprisingly, what I'm learning is that's the easy part.
Well, that's exactly it. That's what you see in parenting. You look back at each stage, and you're like, that was easier than this. And it's like, right, because that's getting you to the next stage of now we're going to have a relationship. Now we can have a relationship. And your lack of obedience is not about obeying as an end. It's about a relationship. It's about you understanding me. You have a relationship with me, and I'm teaching you about this. And that's what that is about. And, you just walk with them through that. And it's a much harder work to do, but it will bear great fruit as you're willing to invest in the relationship. And I personally, that's when you look at the modern era, our era today of parenting, that's what you see missing. That's why you see the chaos in our society, because it's this lack of understanding of relationship. And so, I mean, if I have no relationship with you, if I have no connection to you whatsoever, you're a non-entity to me, and I can treat you as such. And that's what we see taking place. Like, there's just we see no respect, we see no honor, we see all these things that are lacking, and it's like because there's no understanding of relationship. Like, relationship restrains you in a good way. And when you understand relationship, like, you're a person and I have to treat you as such. And man, it's just crazy how we can treat each other the way we do and not realize, like, that's a person you're talking to. Why are you behaving that way? And it really is, you just scratch your head. It's a person you're talking to, like, and so, but yeah. I know it's a kind of rabbit hole here. We're talking about completely different about parenting and child rearing and so forth. But it's kind of the way our minds sometimes work, as we kind of run down rabbit holes. But I just think it's a valuable thing to be aware of as a parent. Like, your goal is wanting to build relationship, because ultimately you want them to walk with God, and that's relationship. So that's what you're trying to build. And if you build that and then let them in as an adult, into your life as an adult, on an adult relationship, you can have a very fruitful, meaningful life with your children as they grow older. Because the reality is, one day the roles are going to completely be reversed. You are going to be the child, and they are going to be the parent. And you're going to be going, I want the keys to the car again to go somewhere. And they're going to be going, sorry, Pop, you're not getting those keys.
My mom will kill me for saying this, but we always, like, we just, you joke about this because I forget. You get these discussions like, "Are you going to take care of me?" When I'm like,
Right,
"Oh man, we'll find a really nice nurse at home for you."
Right.
She hates that, which is like, no, we're not going to do that. But or if it ever came to that, of course we would find.
Right. The way my son says it to me, he says, "Be careful, Dad. I'm the one putting you in the nursing home."
Yeah.
So, but it is crazy how life goes. The cyclical nature of it, where it does happen. I know I say this to couples or people that have older parents. I mean, by older, I mean, they're in their 80s and 90s. I mean, they're in that stage of life where they are needing care. And I said, at that stage, the hardest place you're going to get to, and I say this aware of my own life, the mortality of my own life, that the role will reverse and you will take on the parent role. And you will you'll be treating your parent like the child. And I've watched children struggle. I watched parents struggle in that, and children struggle in that. But it's necessary. Like I realize it with my own. Like I say that, aware that 20 years from now, I could be having this conversation with my kids when they're telling me, "Dad, you have to do this," and I could see it myself saying, "No, I don't." Because I'm still the dad, but realizing they're doing that because they love me, because we built this relationship and they love me, and now they're caring for me, and that's why I say if you build this, I think in a healthy way, it doesn't have to be turbulent, because you're recognizing that's how this is to be, and that's good, that is good, because you're going to get to that place where you're going to be the child. And you're gonna need that. I remember having conversations with my mom about that, and my sisters and I coming to certain decisions that are good for her. And I remember those first few that she was like, "Why would you have a conversation about me without me?" And it's like, because this really is about your care, and so it really your input here is we're caring for you. And we're going to do what's best for you, and what you're doing is not the best for you. So you can't do that anymore. Even though you want to, you can't.
Yeah.
And this had to do with like medication and things like that, where it's like, you just can't do that anymore. Well, I'm going to do it. Well, you can't, and you're not. And here's what's going to happen now. And, that puts you in the role like when you had children, like in that role where you're telling your parent, like, this is what you're going to do now. And you do that because you care for them. You do love them, and you are doing what's best for them.
Well, since we're already down the rabbit hole, can I ask you a question related to it?
Yeah.
So when we're thinking of navigating the transition, this is a really question purely out of my curiosity. So navigating the transition between these different stages, for me, I'm thinking about, elementary school into high school, and that transition from pre-adolescence into adolescence. So as a Christian parent, are there things that you would say need to be on our mind as we're entering that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great awareness that you have, that you're going through that transition, because it is a transition. The physiologically, again, I'm not a doctor, but from what I've learned, the hemispheres of the brain does not come together until you reach adolescence. So you go through puberty. Like, that's the marker where now suddenly their brain is really now beginning to function as God intended this to function, or continues to function as God intended this to function. And so the big transition is to realize that they're beginning to now actually think in abstract ways. So their questioning, their questions are different. And I think that's the biggest transition you have to be aware of as you're stepping into that your parenting has to move from "I said so" to now less from declarative statements and more to open-ended discussions, if I could say it that way. Early in parenting, declarative statements. This, that, end of discussion. We're not talking about it. When you get to this stage, it's open-ended questions where now you're actually discussing and you're wanting them to think, and it's through that thinking that you get the window into their life, because they've learned now that they can restrain themselves even if they disagree with you. When they're younger, they just erupt because they have no governor on their emotions, so they just erupt, and you know it. Like, okay, clearly this isn't good, so we're going to deal with this. But they get older and they start to think, well, if I respond this way, I'm going to get in worse trouble, so I'm not. And suddenly they're withholding. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just withholding. And your task is to get into their heart and get into their thinking, get into their head. And so that requires these open-ended statements that have more discussion, and it necessitates that you as the parent have to now withhold your reactions to the crazy things that they say, and not just go like, "What did you just say?" Like, you have to shut that down, not to deny it, but to open the door and allow them to talk about it. Because if they know it's going to bug you, they may not say it. So they just won't tell you. And you always want them to talk to you. You want to be the place. And if you cultivate that over time, that's how you sow the seeds for when they're older. And by older, I mean into their 20s, as they're really going into life, and they're coming back to you for counsel because they know they can talk to you. And that's what you're thinking. Like, this is sowing seeds for something down the road that's going to cultivate another level of relationship with them, that you want them to come back and get counsel from you and to ask you, what do you think? And be able to try to influence their, like, then you know, like, okay, all I can do is influence your thoughts, but here, think of this and think of this. And this has been my experience, so think of that. And you want to be able to be that. You want to be that wise counselor for your older children. And if you do that work now, you can be that then. If you don't do that work now, they don't come to you. And they'll say, like, because you don't listen. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm ready to listen now. And they're like, yeah, this ship sailed.
Too late.
It's too late. So it's really good you're aware, like, you're seeing the beginning changes. You're watching that there's markers. You're trying to check out that when as puberty hits them and so forth. And, you know, again, every child is a little different, but usually boys develop a little bit later than girls. That happens a little bit sooner in females than males, but not all the time. And you have to just know each of your children will be unique and different. And you just have to be aware of that and be tuned into that and have those allow for those conversations to take place.
And not to pick on the low-hanging fruit of what's going on in our culture, but I have noticed this myself with technology, especially with cell phones, like how much that hinders disengagement from building that relationship. Like, because you just it's very easy to just like sit here with your phone and, you know, do your thing. And, you know, it just like, it becomes like this own little orb that you get into, and you can very easy just disengage and be like, just do your thing, go do your thing.
Well, it's amazing how today I don't know if it's number one, but the overwhelming critique by children of their parents is that you're not with me, you're with that. Like and then again, kids learn. So if they go, if you do it, I'm going to do it. And now everybody, I remember Jan and I went to D.C. We're walking around the monuments. So we're at the Jefferson, and we're kind of walking along the what is that? The basin, the Potomac Basin or so, whatever it is. Whatever basin that is, whatever that is. We're walking along that. We're coming through the Roosevelt Memorial, heading over to the MLK one. And as we're coming through the Roosevelt one, you know, we're looking at all the stuff and reading it, and Jan and I are talking about history and all this stuff. And I look over and I see a family sitting on a ledge. And they're all sitting there with their phones, just all scrolling on their phones. And I just was like, now, the optimist in me was saying, "Oh, they're just googling about facts
how to
about
get to the next
FDR."
place. Yeah.
So because we did that, like we'd Google, like let's find more information about this and talk about it. But I'm like, this is our world. Like we're just in our own orb, in our own space. And I agree with you. I see this all over. I've gone to baseball games, basketball games, professional level, and I watch people like. They're not here. They're on their phone. They're either taking a picture about being here or they're just scrolling on their phone and they're not here. And so there is this loss with technology of this interaction that we have with each other that is important, that builds relationship, that technology wants to take away. Technology wants to push you inward into your own world and so forth. And so, it is so obvious when people get together, families get together, and they're just driven to their phone.
I've tried to develop a consciousness about it. Like if we, this week is Tracy's birthday, so we're going to go out to dinner, and made a point the last several times we go out to dinner, I hand my phone to Tracy, put this in your purse. I don't want to see it.
Right.
And we talk and enjoy our time together. And then it's because you have a tendency to just set it down on the table, and then something pops up. You're just like, huh.
What I've learned to do is many times when I'm meeting with someone or talking, I flip it over.
Yeah.
I just turn it around, and that way I can't see anything on it. I don't have a lot of notifications on it for that reason. I just don't have it. But some of these apps just put them on automatically. I don't know why it happens. But I just turn it around. The other thing I do at home, which is why sometimes it's hard to get a hold of me, I put my phone down on the counter, and I usually leave it there, and it's not with me. So if stuff is happening, I just don't know. I find out afterwards, oh, man, something happened. Now, sometimes it's with me. But sometimes it's just off to the side, and I don't see it till much later. Many times at night I'll do that, where I just put it down and it's just off by itself.
Yeah.
I just it's okay, and so,
And when I think about I've been seriously thinking about this a lot, just that transition for us into adolescence, and then so much of what's going on in our culture, like this week, the trial of that, the shooter of the parents of the Oxford high school shooter, and hearing some of the stuff on the news about what's been going on what was going on in their home with stuff. And it's just man, here's in part, I think, why it's adolescence and parents transitioning their children into adolescence just struggle so much, is we're just so disengaged, and we're not really with our kids. We're just doing our own thing, and they're off asking, like you said, asking these deep questions, and their parents are just nowhere to be found, just don't care. And
also some parents just don't have the answers to it. They don't. When you grow up in a culture that's secular, what are your answers to those things? You struggle with going, why am I here, and what's my purpose? Those two foundational questions of life. I always say, we as Christians have answers to those two foundational questions of life. Who am I? I'm a being created in the image and likeness of God. That's an answer. I'm not left to myself to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
I have to look to God to understand who I am, because I'm created in His image and likeness. And He has left me here with a purpose. Why am I here? Well, there's something I am to do. And He's given me information about what I am to do. I am to manage and subdue. I am to be creative. I am to engage in work. All these things are healthy and vital and good. And when you take that away and say to people, figure out life. Yeah, I was there. I didn't grow up in the church. Figure out life. I didn't make my choices were not good choices. They were not wise choices. They were certainly, I made decisions, but they weren't wise ones. And in the course of that, I know they hurt a lot of people, because the relationship was not That's not what I was concerned about. So people could be a means to an end.
Yeah.
So it's fine to do whatever you want to people. And so it's just, in a world that is broken the way our world is, to not understand that. Again, what you're teaching something to your kids. Mm-hmm. And look at the consequence of that.
Yeah.
Just so sad all around. How just what an amazing take away the vitriol about being angry and everything. Just how all of it is just sad. All of it.
Yeah.
Across the entire spectrum of that. So, yeah, it just is. Nothing can replace what God has ordained, and we see through these, sometimes these really bad and horrible examples, a reminder of that. Like, mm-hmm. Here's the consequence of those actions, of believing you can try to understand life apart from Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. When I was growing up, there was still that cultural Christianity that was around, that, there was still, that understanding of relationship and respect, and, that you just naturally had, that was just, it was a part of life. And I mean, I learned it, I may have rebelled against it, but I did mm-hmm. learn it. And it did have legacy in my life. I mean, eventually it did put up, even in my life, it put up parameters. Like, there were certain things I just wouldn't do. So an example of that would be, even though I didn't grow up as a Christian, like, I would never hit a woman. Like, mm-hmm. never. I just never would have. Like, I understood there's a respect that you are to give women, and that you just, mm-hmm. you don't ever do that. Like, you would just never, ever do that. Mm-hmm. There was a respect that you showed older people, and you just did that. You just showed them respect, whether you agreed with them or not. It didn't matter who they were. It really didn't matter who they were. If they were older than you just showed them respect. Mm-hmm. They were the adult and you weren't, and that's just, you wanted to be the adult. You waited to be the adult, but you just showed them respect. And so you did that. You understood mm-hmm. your place. It's my place as a child. This was always the interesting one. It's my place as a child not to speak unless an adult, they engage me. And people may say that's so restrictive. I don't know. I mean, if they engage with you, you engage with them. But mm-hmm. you just didn't approach adults and engage in a conversation with them. You just respected they're the adult and they mm-hmm. invite you in. Just how we lived life. Yeah. And I think that's a legacy of that, the culture of just recognizing that there are differences between us. And that's not bad. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a healthy thing. Once I became a Christian, it made more sense to me. And I started to understand the whys and the wherefores better, which helped me to, mm-hmm. Teach my children that and so forth. But clearly it's different today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you letting me go a little farther afield.
Hey, no problem.
But maybe just briefly, we could hit on the elders. I know we're all of us elders are really excited about Josh and Dan coming on. So do you want to just kind of walk us through a little bit of the process that we've laid out for them? And
yeah, we're really excited about this, about them, and what they could bring to us as the Lord would lead through this, and what we can contribute to them, and how together we could really see the gospel advance through here. What we see when we recognize we're honored that the Lord would bless us with men who could be considered for this. So we're very honored by that the Lord would entrust that to us. So we praise the Lord for that. We recognize that it's kind of a process to onboard men into that role. And so the way we envision this unfolding in the months to come, we want to do some assessments with them so that they can kind of examine their life, and we together with them can examine that and then be able to talk about it. So we've focused in on the biblical areas that we think are valuable, both character and competency. which are the primary ones that we see in the scriptures, and character being the first and foremost of them. Like we want godly men. We believe these guys are godly. And so we're hoping we get a confirmation here that what we perceive is factual. And so we want to focus on our character because we think that's such a foundational part of this. Like we just want godly men. And so character focuses in on that. Then we want to look at competency, that a way in which then as shepherds we care and we equip the saints to do the work of service. So there's an element of competency. We know competency grows over time. So we're all learning as shepherds. None of us as shepherds could say, we have all the skills of shepherding. We're always learning. So that's what you're always looking for. Like, are they growing and developing and thriving in these areas and so forth? We just don't look at one area of competency. There are a number of them that we look at. So, we'll spend some time there looking at those. And then chemistry, what we refer to as chemistry. And that really is looking at and asking this, we think, an important question. Are they a good fit with us, and are we a good fit with them? They could be truly men of character and competency and called as elders. They're just not a good fit with us, and maybe they need to then, how do we help them get to where they need to be? Because they're not a good fit with us. This is the Paul Barnabas kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like there is a chemistry that has to work, and are we going to work together as a team? Can we do that? And it's worth talking about that a little bit. And we think that's a healthy thing, which would be interesting. Like, yes, we think they're elders and we want to affirm that, but then we want to help them get someplace else. Not in a bad way. Like, we want you to thrive. And we think that's a good thing to do that. So we just don't make the assumption it's here. We think it's here, but we want to actually spend some time talking about that because we think that's a healthy discussion. So, and in addition to that, they'll join us in our meetings as a non-voting participant, and just allow to see how the rhythm of our life together as elders, and they're a part of that, and they can contribute and engage as they would as an elder. Like, we want them to recognize their place and get their voice. So we want them to have that experiential aspect of it as well. So they joined us last Sunday at our elders meeting at 8:00, and they'll join us for our monthly accountability meetings, and they'll start to engage with us, and involve with us. And then as we go through that process, we come to the end of it, and we're all together saying amen. Then we want to bring them to the congregation for that vote of affirmation. Like, yes, we believe these men are, and then we'll take them into that process, and we're excited about that. And what we encouraged our church family to do, in addition to praying for them, was that if you don't know them yet, don't wait until the end of this to get to know them. Start now and, invite them, engage with them, talk with them, like learn about these guys now. And take that time to do that. Yeah. It'll bless you. I believe if you get to know these two guys, I think you would agree with me with this. I think our other elders would agree as well, that if you get to know these guys, I think you'll be blessed. I think you'll be encouraged. God's doing just a really good work in their life, and I think you'll walk away very refreshed and encouraged at what God's doing in their life.
And I think to that point, like it is helpful if speaking to you as a church member, if you deliberately engage and try to build that relationship. And I just know having started in 3 different churches now, once as a youth pastor and then as a pastor in Ovid, and then coming back here, it is really hard to get to know people when you've got 300 people. Right. and it goes a long way if as the congregation engages with you, if they are also proactive in it. Not trying to say that Dan and Josh shouldn't pursue relationships and get to know people, but
I totally understand.
It's just so much more helpful to develop those relationships when just as a church member, you just go out of your way. Like, I don't know this person as well as I should or would like to, and let's engage there and see what ways I can pursue a relationship with.
Yeah, that's a great point, John, because one of the things that we try to do as elders is to allow our lives to be examples so that you would know how to live out the faith. And so what we're saying to you is we don't wait for you to have a relationship with us. We engage with you to have relationship. So we engage with you to have relationship, to talk, to learn, to know. And we're doing that, one, because we love you and we want to care for you and encourage you and strengthen you. But two, to show you this is what you're to do. And you are to turn and then have relationship. You aren't to be passive and wait. You are to engage. And if there's one thing that I've seen somewhat consistently in congregants' lives is that passiveness, waiting for a relationship. Well, I'm waiting for someone to reach to me before I reach to them. And we use being an introvert, we use these different ways in which we think that, well, this is the way I am, so this is what I do. And the fact is, we are just to reach to each other. And we're just trying to be the example of reaching to one another. And not all pastors are extroverts.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking
right.
that.
Like there are a lot of pastors that are introverts that have to overcome that and then reach. And it's amazing when you talk to guys in ministry, how many of them are true introverts. Like they're not people that are extroverts and like going there. They are ones that are more reserved. And it's like, but they're showing you, hey, this is how you do this. And that's why we're saying to you, this is a great opportunity. And you'll be blessed. When you give that way, I mean, you're always blessed. I know you've experienced it. I've experienced it. When you share of your life and give of your life, it's always a blessing to be able to engage with that. The heartache comes when it's not reciprocated. That's the heartache. When you feel like it's just, this is a one-way relationship because it's become transactional. You see me as someone to be able to give you something, and then you take it, but you never give anything back. And we are always trying to show you that relationships are meaningful. They're not transactional. They're genuine. They're truly two ways. So, don't be intimidated. There's no reason to be intimidated by us.
Especially if you get to know us, right. There's even less of a reason.
Right. I get it. We have more knowledge of the Bible. Hopefully we have more knowledge of the Bible of you. But that's going to be true. And you're never going to be asked to formally teach like we do. So why are you worried about, like, I can't do that? Well, no one's asking you to do that. So just recognize this is about relation. And so it goes back to our conversation earlier about relationship. This is basic about relationships. And when you don't understand that, it's like you're missing something. Because this is relationship. This is relational. Paul wrote those letters to those churches because he had a relationship with them. And he shows it was an intimate, personal relationship that he had with them.
Yeah.
They didn't run from him. They ran to him. And not all of them, but many of them ran to him to have that relationship. And so recognize that's what we're trying to cultivate here. And here's another step to do that, to cultivate that relationship that we have with one another and to engage in life on that basis of that relationship.
Yeah, good. And then one other thing that we won't belabor this point too much, but we do hope to see people baptized coming up soon. And so I know this kind of started with our youngest asking to be baptized, and so we're hopeful that he'll be amongst that group. But it is just on the point of relationship, as we've entered into relationship with Jesus Christ through our salvation and through what the Spirit has done within us. It's important as believers that we take that step of identifying with Him and publicly declaring that relationship and identifying with Him, following Him in baptism. And so it's we hope that coming up soon, we don't have an exact date yet, but that would have a baptism service. And if your children or you as an adult haven't ever been baptized, we would hope that you would follow the Lord in that way and decides that you want to identify with Christ publicly.
Amen.
So,
Yep. Good word.
yeah. Lord willing, we'll be back again together next week, and at some point or another, we're going to loop Eric back in. Just schedules have been hard for us all, so we've been trying to make the podcast work. And so Eric looks like he'll be back with us next week, and Lord willing, that'll be the case. So
Sounds good.
see you guys next week.